Fears of a trade war between the United States and China have eased after Washington halted plans to impose tariffs on up to $150 billion of imports. After a couple of days of talks, China agreed to buy more American agricultural and energy products to cut the large trade deficit, while both agreed to suspend prohibitive trade sanctions. But analysts warn it's likely or unlikely to end the simmering trade tensions between the world's two biggest economies. And of course, New Zealand is a trading nation and desperate for trade wars to not break out. Our economics correspondent Patrick O'Mara is looking at all of this for us.
The US and China have pulled back from the brink of a trade war, and both have expressed satisfaction with the outcome. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says the US-run commitments from China should cut America's $335 billion annual trade deficit.
We want China to open up markets, lower tariffs, lower non-tariff barriers, give us a chance. We also want China, however, to change their behavior with respect to technology transfers and also the theft of intellectual property rights. Now, are we going to get everything? I don't know, but I will say this, we're making terrific progress, and I think the meetings here in Washington were very positive, and the president himself has become very optimistic and supportive.
Beijing promised to buy a lot more American farm goods and energy, but no detailed targets were forthcoming after its negotiators resisted President Trump's push for China to increase its purchases by $200 billion a year. China's Vice President Liu He, who led the negotiations in Washington, says both sides agreed that imposing punitive tariffs wasn't the answer.
The strongest demand from both the Chinese side and the U.S. side is to stop the trade war and stop imposing more tariffs on each other's products. This time, both sides pledged to stop the trade war and develop good relations, be it in trade or in investment. I think this is a major demand from both countries.
A US delegation will head to China for further talks in the coming week. Trade observer Douglas Powell of the Carnegie Endowment think tank says reducing the yawning trade deficit is less of a priority than tackling China's structural issues, such as state subsidies for key industries and systematic theft of US intellectual property.
The Chinese know that they've been gaming the system, and they're trying to find the cheapest way to deal with the problem that's now been presented to them. They've been assisted because the American team has come up with 8 different demands and no clear priority as to which 1, 2, or 3 are the most important.
New Zealand Special Agricultural Trade Envoy Mike Peterson warns the risk of a trade war hasn't gone away. He says China and the US still have some way to go to settle their differences. Mr. Peterson says separate action by America to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium has prompted other nations to impose their own sanctions in return.
We've seen Europe file a list to the WTO, also Japan, India as well, and there's talk of other countries getting lists prepared as well. So, that shows that the rest of the world is taking this very seriously, and the risk of a tit-for-tat trade war is still very real.
Former trade negotiator and partner at Saunders Unsworth, Charles Finney, says any US-China deal that makes it easy for America's agricultural products to be sold in China could harm New Zealand's farmers.
We're just going to have to watch this very closely because just as a trade war could potentially have implications for us either indirectly or directly, any desire by China to buy more from the United States could likewise have some impact which could be negative for us.
Mr. Finney expects talks between the world's two largest economies are unlikely to run smoothly, and further threats of trade sanctions by President Trump cannot be ruled out. For Checkpoint, Patrick O'Mara.